everybody, Dutch Sense here. 1:48 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, January 10th, 2015. And I've got you looking at Earthquake 3D here, the last 24 hours of earthquakes, 4.0 and greater internationally, 2.5 and greater in the US. And we got a few things going on here I want to draw your attention to. We'll start out here in the Pacific. We have a small earthquake swarm happening in Hawaii. And this is happening on the flanks of Kilauea, so I think we can probably expect to see some increased lava flow at the Puna lava flow. And if you guys aren't following that, you guys can come over to my Facebook page where I've been making posts, or over on my YouTube page where I've got a couple lava flow video updates. And I know a lot of people aren't really interested in the small lava flow, however, it's looking like it might break out a little more because of the activity there. But I want to draw your attention to what's going on in the United States over the last 24 hours. Since I've made my series of earthquake updates about the fracking operation down here in Texas and Dallas, and in Snyder producing back-to-back earthquakes, and a series of borderline 4.0 earthquakes over the last 24 hours in Oklahoma, the media has picked up these stories. And I'm going to put a link down below to a 10-minute video on fracking run by RT of all people, where they interviewed professional geologists and seismologists regarding the fracking earthquake issue, and they fully go into it, and the professional fully confirms everything that I told you over the last several years. Everything. Also, in the same time that aired, we had a series of earthquakes that developed at more fracking operations, the most recent being just in the last 20 minutes, a 2.6 struck in Trinidad, Colorado, back at the Trinidad fracking operation. Also, 2 more earthquakes at the Western Yellowstone magma chamber edge in central Idaho. And I've got links down below this video for all of this, so you guys can go source out, read about the magma chamber, how they did new measurements, and found out that it goes from the park here in Western Yellowstone all the way over into central Idaho, the magma chamber. And it goes down to something like 700 kilometers, but over at this depth, it's about 200 kilometers. So the area below Idaho is being displaced, and it's causing an earthquake swarm at that location. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the earthquake in Colorado, since there was a lot of denial about the Colorado earthquakes being man-made, and I received a lot of flack over the last couple of years. Now that the professionals have confirmed every other area that we're talking about, Ohio, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, South Dakota, North Dakota, I want to draw your attention to the earthquakes in Colorado, and we will get that on the map. Now, speaking of being on the map, once this loads, there's so much detail that has to load here because of all the wells. We're not just talking about a topography map that has to load, we're talking about an actual picture, and each one of these is a frack well. Let me zoom in. We got our little pond here. Here, look, you even got a truck out there back in the backwoods. We've got our little shack, we've got our apparatus, and we've got our tank with a pipe. And each one of these, let me zoom in. Okay, they have a little overflow pond that they either draw water from or sometimes spit water out into. And that's wastewater, guys. These are wastewater injection wells. What they'll do is they'll inject water deep down into the ground, something like 5 million gallons per well. They will pump down into the ground and fracture the shale. What they found, and as you'll see in the video I've linked below from the professional, that puts fluid into fault lines that they did not map. Per the professional, all the fracking companies up until recently didn't map the fault lines they were fracking into. They weren't forced to, they didn't have to, so they didn't. So there's fault lines in these areas that are being literally injected with liquid, and that's causing movement in areas that they weren't expecting. And the professionals say that could get upwards of larger earthquakes. Now, we already know 5.0 earthquake struck down here in South Colorado. That's why we're watching the area now. 5.0 struck in 2011. Also 5.0 in Oklahoma, 5.0 in Arkansas. Boom, 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 within a few months of each other. And in the same day, literally within the same 24-hour period as the 5.0 in Colorado, there was that 5.9 that struck on the East Coast, caused damage to the Washington Monument. You guys may remember that just a few years ago. And that was near a frack well as well, over here, which was right next to a nuclear reactor. So they were fracking within a few miles of the nuclear reactor, and the 5.9 struck right there in Virginia. Now, In the far northwest, we've seen a series of smaller earthquakes, and this is going to fall on you guys to go look up, but I want to show you what exists at the location in Nevada, okay? So let's just go ahead and get the coordinates from the USGS for the Nevada earthquake. Okay, now you heard that ding. That was actually a borderline 6.0 earthquake. This may be revised up to a 6.0. 5.8 just struck in the Philippines on the main island, one of the main islands of the Philippines. So that may cause some damage over there. We might hear about that. The depth on that is rather shallow compared to the other earthquakes that have happened in the region over the last week. Let's just take a comparison. The higher these are off the planet, the deeper they are into the earth. So that one kind of falls mid-range between all the other deeper 4 and 5.0 activity. So you can see all these here. There's been a lot of movement in the West Pacific, but I digress. Let's get back over to the United States. Right now we're looking at the earthquakes over the last 7 days. See this swarm here in Nevada? We could pull any one of these earthquakes coordinates, and let's just do that. Now they listed as Oregon, but it's actually Nevada. So let's pull the actual geo-coordinates on this. I'm going to show you what resides at this earthquake epicenter. I've shown people before, haven't done a video on it in a long time, so let's just go look. I'm not going to spoil this for you either. I'm going to let you guys see, as I zoom in, what I found. Okay, so here's our earthquake epicenter, and here's a previous earthquake that happened on December 4th. Now there's been so many in this spot, and you can see that this is clearly a multiple mile long fault zone that goes right up here. It follows right up. You can follow the split. These are fault lines, okay? But what exists upon the fault lines are very interesting. We've got a few buttes. If you guys understand about volcanic buttes, we've got a few in Southern California near Salton Sea, geothermal. These volcanoes, these small buttes, have magma chambers down below that rise, and they'll raise up and split the earth above at the surface level. So what we're looking at here is clearly an old lava flow from an old rift a long time ago, an old fissure that formed from a butte that's here, and you can see the edges of it, but it's ancient. Each one of these plateaus has an edge that's exposed, and you can see that the edge is made of old lavic rock. And you don't have to take my word for it. I'll put the geo-coordinates for this down below. You guys can come and look along the edge of these plateaus and inspect the basalt that's there. Now we have basins here, lake beds. These basins and lake beds are at the center of what appear to be old volcanoes. These were most likely at some point volcanoes which collapsed and then formed into basins, maybe even undersea, very, very long time ago. So here's the butte that I was zooming in on, and it's Telltale Volcanic Butte, a small mound rising out of the edge of a fault zone, and surrounding it, lavic basalt, lava rock, red lavic rock. And there's a series of these, not just one, a series of small buttes all over the place here. So Yellow Peak is a butte. You can look up each one. Now, of course, Google Earth doesn't have each butte marked. There's Table Butte. And when you inspect the area, you'll find that there's these areas littered. This area is littered with volcanoes. Not too surprising, considering the whole area, the whole fault zone here, just to the west, is, well, larger volcanoes. And we're talking very, very large, marked by the USGS, with somewhat fresh lavic flows, as you can see here. So what's going on here right there that we just looked at is here, and it's been weathered away. A lot of these earthquakes here, let's get back over to Earthquake 3D, when they first began, started at the surface, 0.0 kilometers, hundreds of them over the last several months, and now they've progressed deeper. What does that mean? I don't know yet. We're trying to figure that out, actually. We're trying to figure out what's going on here in northwest Nevada. Is it a new butte forming? Is it an old butte rising? Will we see some surface activity at some point other than earthquake activity? Who knows? But when you look at the area around it, look at the area, how it's swarming to the northeast at the Yellowstone magma chamber here in Idaho. And then you follow the edge of the craton, which I've been talking about ad nauseum for so long. You can trace the dots. You can connect these dots from the Pacific Northwest down here through Idaho, down to Texas, and then back up here to the 2.7 up in the northeast, this forms the edge of the craton, the edge of the unsubducted plate. Relatively stable over the last several, quote-unquote, hundreds of millions of years, and according to the professional who I quoted at the start of this, literally eons of silence in some of these areas where they're now having movement due to man-made activity. At the end of the broadcast, the professional and the RT guy talk about fracking California and fracking the fault lines from the Northwest down through California, and how that could lead to a larger earthquake. And they discuss that and say it's possible. Again, these are the professionals. These are not, conspiracy theorists online that people accuse of fear-mongering. That's what I got accused of when I'm showing earthquakes happening at the fracking operation in Colorado, for instance, for the last several years. People down below my videos came and accused me of fear-mongering, saying that there was no fracking connection. They said, you need to provide some professional sources showing that there's fracking connection, because it's just your hearsay. Meanwhile, I'm showing the picture of the frack well right on top of the earthquake epicenter, and there is no doubt about it. Areas that are not normally seismically prone, such as Texas. We can go pull this coordinate here. I got called a conspiracy theorist 2 years ago for showing earthquakes in Snyder, Texas. Let's go look it up now that the professionals are saying that it's fracking related. Let's go look at the same area before and see how I could get called a conspiracy theorist for noticing an earthquake happening in an oil operation this big. Each one of these pads is an oil well or a frack well, and they have full-on compressor stations, pipelines to gather the stuff together, and people were telling me they were not related. It's just coincidence. That's what they said. Well, now we know that when you inject 5 million gallons of water per well down into a fault line, that it puts liquid and water pressure onto a fault line in such a way that it causes an earthquake. And they're worried that it's going to get bigger. And when you look at the size of the operation spanning here just in Snyder, Texas, from, well, gosh, where can I start my place marker? Because they just keep on going. Let's start from down here to up here. 50 miles of fracked oil wells, and that's just right there, guys. I mean, we know it goes on and on and on, and it's not just in Texas. I showed you the operation over in Colorado. You can look at the operation in Oklahoma. Each one of these operations goes on for miles and miles and miles, and they've done it around residential areas, lakes. I mean, look at this. Each one of these guys, and I got so tired of marking them, each one of these little squares, look, each one is a frack well built right next to houses, right next to lakes, reservoirs where they're injecting wastewater. And look, there's almost as many frack wells as there are plots of land. I mean, we're talking, one every house, every other house is now a frack well. Every other plot of land, on and on and on and on, from one to the other. There is no stop in between them. People have gotten greedy. Look at this. People in Oklahoma have gotten greedy. People in Texas have gotten greedy. People in Colorado, everywhere where this is going on, these people are greedy. Look at that. Look, each one, you say, oh, those must be mobile homes or something. Touch. No. Look, brand new houses right here. Here. I wonder if there's a street level view. Hey, there is. Okay, let's go zoom in. Look at that. Look at this nice subdivision. Look at this. And then, doosh. Yeah, I mean, and sometimes they're even closer. Sometimes they're in the subdivision itself. Okay, let's go find one that's in a subdivision, and so we can see. You got this nice house, and then right next to you is a frack. Oh, look at this one. Look. Here's a nice house here. Here's a nice house here. Here's your backyard. I bet you one of these people that lives in these houses owns the frack well. Look at that. Yeah, we got a little eyesore. Kids, you're gonna need to stay away from that. There could be an off flaring at some point that could burn down your neighborhood, and there may be a natural gas leak. And these houses, you better have good, strong foundation. Look at their mailbox. You're gonna need a stronger mailbox, bro. As a matter of fact, I recommend making it out of plastic so it's a little bit flexible, because that's gonna be breaking here sometime soon. All these houses are going to have fractured foundations. No joke. Again, okay, you don't believe me, right? You guys, you think I'm exaggerating. Okay, let's back this out and look at the earthquakes that have happened in the area that I've marked over the last, I don't know. I mean, we were talking thousands of earthquakes here, but the reason I marked these frack wells is because there were earthquakes there to begin with. Okay, so I don't even have all the earthquakes marked there. I can't. There's thousands of them. I would be sitting here all day marking the earthquakes that have happened in upwards of 5.0. 5.0, guys. I mean, we're talking major damage can happen in that 5.0 range. And this is just, to me, this is kind of sickening, right? I mean, look at this, guys. Like leeches. Each one of these is a leaching off the earth, and it's causing earthquakes. There's no taking this back now. There is no filling it in with concrete, filling the well in with concrete. You can't, that's not going to be happening, guys. So you've done fractured your neighborhood. You've done fractured your whole region. And now it's spreading out in such a way that it's fractured the entire South. From Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and then it cuts off right here around Yellowstone. You know, so some geologist said, you know, I don't know if we should be injecting water down anywhere near Yellowstone, so let's just not frack right there. But you guys can do some oil pumping, you can do some oil stuff, but let's not do that fracking. And then to the west, now the magma chamber starts moving, and then you got another set of fracking operations up here in the northwest. You can go check that out in Canada, which there's a big debate on in Canada, by the way, about those tar sands up there, okay? All right, this devolved into a little bit of a rant, but it needs to be ranted on at some point. There's nobody else that's going to do this. There's the professional that's coming out on RT. Of course, he can't say it like it is because he's got a job to worry about, but I'm going to say it how it is. You greedy sons of bitches, you're causing earthquakes in areas that, well, now there's no way to take it back. There's no way to stop it. We just have to wait and see how bad it gets. What happens when you fracture an entire area like that? Let me put it this way, guys. Let's say you've got a strong piece of stone that you put a lot of weight on, trucks drive across it, let's say, block of stone that holds up a bridge, and you come in and you start drilling that stone. Now you can drill it in a certain way that it's going to be okay, that it'll be able to transfer that weight through the stone and not fracture. However, you come in and start drilling it this way, that way, horizontally, do lines through it, diagonally, and you drive a heavy truck across it, or you put any kind of load on it from any side. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to crack at its weakest point where the drilling has caused a weak spot in the block. We're talking about a block, an edge of the craton being the block. It is being drilled all along the edge from here, down through here, back literally up the East Coast through, well, now there's a debate upon that in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, but they're doing it there too. This is the confirmed edge, the defined edge of the North American plate, which they are drilling out like they're drilling out cavities in a tooth. And if you put pressure on a tooth that's been drilled out, it fractures. If you put pressure on any kind of solid material that's been drilled out inappropriately, it will bend, it will fracture. So guys, there you go. Much love, be safe, always have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared just in case, because some of these earthquakes, these man-made earthquakes, these induced seismicity as they call it, can get large. And it can cause damage. Just talk to the people in Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Colorado whose facades fell off the front of their houses, whose chimneys collapsed in and you didn't hear about it. Grandmas were hurt, heirlooms lost, everything, houses damaged on the inside, foundations destroyed, people have had to move, and now there's even been deaths. Yes, deaths this past year when the fracking operation in Colorado blew in western Colorado. A fracking operation released millions of tons of compressed liquid sand and rock. They tried to call it a lake on the top of a mountain that collapsed, and the lake was so small. Now, of course, they're not going to admit it, but that's 3 people killed by a fracking operation exploding under high pressure and the high pressure falling literally right here at the western portion of Colorado, where this blast took place at a fracking operation there. It falls right along the edge. There was landslides to the north within the week before where a mountain fractured in Jackson Hole. They tried to blame on flooding, but it was totally dry, and then they came back out and said it was seismic related. We have the magma chamber here moving, and then up here in Washington at the same time, there was a massive landslide which was preceded by a 1 to 2.0 earthquake an hour before. So landslide here, chamber here, landslide here, fracking operation blew here, earthquakes here, earthquakes, 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 all along the edge of the plate. Hope that sums it up for you. It's undeniable. To me, as a person who watches it regularly, it's undeniable. When you see these pop off along the edge and they're not popping off anywhere else, that lets you know. And the 2.7 up here to the northeast seals the deal right along the northeast edge. We were expecting movement in the northeast because of the pressure to the west. That turns all of geology on its head, saying that earthquakes aren't related across vast distances because we've got movement down here causing movement up here within the same couple days. And movement happening back to back across just a few hundred miles, here, 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 back, back, back and forth, and then back and forth, back and forth. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go look at the times on the earthquakes and just watch them as they pop off. So much love, guys. Again, be safe.